Good evening and welcome back. I'm Britt Hume, and this is On the Record. New Fox polls out tonight point to a still tightening race with just 4 days until today. The Real Clear Politics average of national polls shows Hillary Clinton with a 1.5-point lead in a two-way race and a 2.3-point lead in a four-way. The betting odds now show Clinton leading Trump by a margin of about 3-1 in the odds. That new Fox News poll, meanwhile, puts Clinton up by 2 in a four-way race, with her up just by 1 in a two-way. Just weeks ago, she had a much more significant lead there. So where is this new support for Donald Trump or opposition to Hillary Clinton coming from? To dig into that, we're joined by Josh Kraushaar, political editor at National Journal. Josh, what are you seeing inside this Fox poll we've just got out tonight that tells you something about where this is all seems to be headed at the moment?
Well, look, a lot of the boost for Donald Trump is coming from Republicans. 85% of registered Republicans now say they support Donald Trump, which is sort of a high watermark for Trump. He's been struggling to consolidate the Republican base.
Right.
And some of these anti-Trump or Trump-skeptical Republicans, especially after the Comey news last weekend, are starting to come back home. They're starting to hold their nose and vote for Donald Trump at the top of the ticket. So the base is coming home for Donald Trump. And a lot of Democrats, the base for the Democratic Party is getting a little bit disillusioned. They're still voting for Hillary Clinton. She's winning over 90% of Democrats, but enthusiasm among Democrats is a little bit down.
Let's see if we can get a look at the numbers on enthusiasm. We've got the number on the presidential preference on the screen. You can see that she's in the two-way race. She's actually let's look at it. We don't seem to have the enthusiasm number handy, but for a long time Trump had the enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. Then he lost it. Now he seems to have it back.
He's got it back. He has an advantage in enthusiasm, especially among those very enthusiastic to vote. And that's the ground game that Donald Trump and the Republican Party don't have can be supplemented or can be made up.
If energetic voters.
Organic energy. People really want to
now look at this. This is the favorable and unfavorable. For a long time, they both, for the ages, had net unfavorable ratings above 50%. But now it's basically a tie, which may suggest something about why this race is tightened so much.
Absolutely. One of the big stories in the last Fox poll was that Hillary Clinton's favorable numbers were actually as good as they've been in the entire campaign. She ended last week talking about a positive message, talking about trying to win over moderate Republican voters. That's changed, and she's gone full negative this final week because she saw those numbers going down.
Full negative means rallying the base, right?
When we go up, when they go down, we go up. We go high. That's not part of the Clinton message anymore.
No. And now I do want to discuss with you a little bit about a factor in this race that's worth mentioning. That is, in 2012, Mitt Romney got 93% of Republican votes. It is true, certainly, that Donald Trump is at a high water mark with 85, but it does suggest that he's got some room to grow here in the final days. There are not that many undecided voters. I wonder if some percentage of the remaining percent to get to where Romney was are not available to him because they've either already voted or they may be voting for nobody for president, for a third-party candidate, or even in some cases for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, the bad news for Trump is I think 85% is more close to a high water mark.
You don't think he's going to get many more than that? Not that many left. Right?
Not many left, and the problem is it's these college-educated moderate women that are very, very resistant to Donald Trump. In Philadelphia suburbs and a lot of the more affluent parts of the map, you see a lot of women in particular very resistant, won't cast their vote for Donald Trump, even though they traditionally vote for Republican candidates.
We're looking at the women number now, and it's no surprise that Hillary Clinton is winning among women by 13 percentage points. And there's a similar number on men, and he's winning that by, we don't have it there on the screen, but he's winning that by about 10. Here it comes. He's winning that by 10 points or 11 points. There are more women, right, than there are men in this country. So you can't offset the women number of 13 by an 11-point win among men because there are more women, right?
That's absolutely right. And one of the big demographic groups to look at is the working class women, because working class voters overwhelmingly like Donald Trump. Working class women, though, a lot less favorable towards him. One of the big shifts we've seen in a lot of these other polls is that a lot of those working class white women have actually turned towards Trump in the wake of the Hillary Clinton revelations.
Wow. Okay, Josh, nice to see you. Thanks very much for coming in so often this fall. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, Brett.
Donald Trump hit a trifecta of battleground states today. He started off in New Hampshire. A few hours later, he was in Ohio. And right now, his rally in Pennsylvania is about to get started. Fox News campaign Carl Cameron is live in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Oh, you're indoor once again. Carl, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. We're in the sweetest city in America, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Trump's likely to talk about health care tonight, and it comes as he has now released a 2-minute closing argument advertisement that talks a great deal about Obamacare. And here in Pennsylvania, the premiums are expected to go up 33% next year. And we can expect when Mr. Trump gets here, he'll be ringing that bell hard. It's one of the things that has helped him close the gap. Obviously, the FBI sort of restoration of the investigation was a big, big opportunity for him. But he's also been lacing his speeches with an awful lot of policy. This morning, he began in Manchester, New Hampshire. Actually, Atkinson, not far from there. And there, in a big rally, he was talking about the jobs report on unemployment today. Now, unemployment ticked down to 4.9%, down from 5% in the previous month. This is October we're talking about. But Trump was complaining that that's not an improvement. There were 160,000 new jobs created. There were over 400,000 people who left the workforce. And Trump made the lowest, 2.9 million, 2.9 unemployment. And as for the 4.9, it turns out that that is the lowest jobs report to come out on the Friday before Election Day in the last 40 years. From there, he went to Ohio, Wilmington, Ohio specifically, another raucous report at the center, and the capacity is 10,000. And they're pretty much filling the seats. This place is going to be completely sold out before Mr. Trump gets here. The Donald has decided to ramp it up and ramp it up seriously for the remainder of these 4 days on the campaign trail. Tomorrow, he's got 5 stops. By the end of the weekend, he'll have hit 11 states. He plans to campaign both on Monday and on Tuesday. On Election Day, he's going back out on the trail after he casts his ballot in New York. He'll be hitting the trail again, so leaving nothing on the table, going for every vote, recognizing that it is so close that any mishap could...
Carl, good stuff, man. Thanks very much. Hillary Clinton also visited a trio of states today. She started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, of course, and then she was in Detroit, and tonight she'll be in Cleveland. That's where we find Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Brett, and we are inside at a very loud concert. It's a Get Out the Vote concert that will start shortly. She will be here with Jay-Z on stage. She's trying to appeal to African-American voters and especially young millennials. That is a group that she's having a bit of an enthusiasm gap with, and that's why you're seeing them spend so much time trying to get out the vote with them. Here's what she said earlier today.
This is one of those make or break moments for the United States. It is in your hands. And when your kids and your grandkids ask what you did in 2016, when everything was on the line, I hope you'll be able to say, I voted for a better, stronger, fairer America.
President Obama was interrupted by a Trump supporter when he returned to North Carolina again today, an indication of how important they feel that state is. President Obama appealed for calm after his speech was interrupted. Here's what he said.
First of all, we live in a country that respects free speech. So, second of all, it looks like maybe he might have served in our military, and we got to respect that. Third of all, he was elderly, and we got to respect our elders. And fourth of all, don't boo. Oh.
New data provided by the Clinton campaign suggests Latino voters are turning out in record numbers, up 120% in Florida since 2012. But there continues to be an enthusiasm gap, as we mentioned, among African-American voters. Vice President Joe Biden made this appeal in Wisconsin today.
I've been an African-American in the good old days.
Meantime, Huma Abedin, Clinton's aide, appeared at a public campaign event for the first time since the FBI director's announcement last Friday. She was at a fundraiser in Washington, D.C., hosted by Vogue editor Anna Wintour. What's interesting, Britt, is if you look at the new Fox poll, those who were polled said by 74% said that the FBI director's letter to Capitol Hill announcing the reopening of this investigation did not cause them to change their vote. However, it's very clear that these polls are tightening. There's a good reason that Hillary Clinton had to go to Michigan, a blue state that has not voted a Republican since 1988, a sign of just how close they think these states are. Back to you.
Down to the wire, as the cliche goes. Jennifer, thanks very much. Now let's look into some of those tight Senate races that could swing the balance of power in that body. In New Hampshire, incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte is holding onto a narrow lead over the Democratic challenger, that's the Governor Maggie Hassan. Former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu joins me from his home in Hampton Falls, New Hampshire. Governor, nice to see you.
How are you, Brett? Happy only 4 more days.
Yeah, only 4 more, and only 3 more for me as an anchor. I'm sure the audience will be looking forward to that. Let me guess. You obviously are for Kelly Ayotte.
Certainly.
And I would guess that you think she's going to win. Am I right about that?
I think right now Kelly is about 2 points ahead. I think Trump is about even. I think my son, who's running for governor, is about 1 or 2 points ahead as well. And I think the momentum has shifted rather significantly in New Hampshire in the last 4 or 5 days. It's a get out the vote.
What do you think is the cause of the shift in momentum? Yeah, but what is the cause of the shift in momentum?
Obviously Comey. coming out last Friday. But it really has affected things, I think, a little bit differently than a lot of folks realize. A lot of people were waiting for a smoking gun to follow the Comey announcement. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But what he did is rip the scab off a sense that the Clintons have infused the Democratic Party with a culture of corruption. And I think that's hitting the Senate race here because the governor here, who's running against Kelly, has been involved in a pay-for-play situation. And I think she had to return $71,000 in illegal contributions.
Well, how? In what sense was that a pay-for-play situation?
Well, she as governor, has to bring contracts forward, and the press has noted that she when she brought a contract forward and insisted that it be voted on instantly by the council that has to approve it. The reason for her insistence seemed to be related to about $150,000 in contributions she got from the contractor.
So she gave the money back, right?
She gave a different set of illegal contributions back in Massachusetts.
All right. So Governor, you know the state.
Yes.
As we look at returns on Tuesday night, where should we be looking? Southern New Hampshire, which has been increasingly important and a pretty high-end area down there. Where?
Well, the southeastern corner of the state has the bulk of the vote, but I think it'd be interesting to watch the votes out of Manchester to see if the Democrats come out of Manchester with an exceptionally large margin, or whether that margin is less than normal. If that margin is less than normal, and you know, if the margin for Kelly is, say, around 10,000 votes coming out of Manchester, it's a very good sign for her.
So you think the margin for her, so Manchester
against her. If the margin against Kelly is only 10,000 votes, she's doing very well.
Governor, we'll be watching. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
North Carolina, of course, is another swing state with a tight Senate battle. Incumbent Senator Richard Burr holds a narrow margin there over Democratic challenger Deborah Ross. For the latest on that race, we turn to Bob Buckley, senior political reporter at Fox 8 in Greensboro. Hello, Bob. What are you seeing down there?
Well, you know, there are three huge races here. Of course, the president is one. Another one is the governor's race here, and then you've got that Senate race. And if there are any of those the Republicans feel best about, it is probably that Senate race. Richard Burr has never won by huge margins. He won by almost 10% last time, 55% of the vote. That's the most he's ever gotten in one of these races. He does not expect it to be a big margin, but he feels fairly confident they're going to pull it out. He's a likable figure in this state. He is chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, and there have been some attacks against him that some of the voters have felt were a bit unfair, and he may get a few sympathy votes that way as well.
So what is your thought about him? Does it look to you like, just from what you know about whatever voting there's been already, that he's in good shape, or not so much?
Probably so in this way, in that more than half of the voters have already voted if you compare to 2012. We had 4.5 million votes in 2012 overall. We have 2.6 million already voted by this point today. Early voting ends tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The thing to note here is, although Democrats have a few more early votes than the Republicans are up by more than 100,000 votes compared to 2012. And particularly African-American votes are down significantly, more than 10% in early voting. That does not bode well for Deborah Ross at all. If I had to guess today, if that's what you're asking, I think Richard Burr will pull out the victory here, but it won't be by a lot. He'll get 52, 53%, but I think he just wants 50% plus one.
Well, while I have you, Bob, let me ask you for your thoughts about the presidential race and the gubernatorial race.
Oh, my word, the presidential race, you know, if we had these answered, we'd all be in Vegas right now. It seems like these candidates are all bucking for in-state tuition, how often they've been here. Both of the major candidates here more than a dozen times since July. And look at the way Hillary Clinton is sending in not just surrogates, but the biggest surrogate she can. Her biggest crowds have been with her surrogates. It's been when Michelle Obama came here last week. It's been when President Obama came here several times. He's been here more than 4 times specifically to campaign for Hillary Clinton. Those are her biggest crowds. That indicates that there may not be the enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton that there is for Donald Trump. His crowds seem to be more enthusiastic. But I think, you know, when you think about it, they don't count enthusiasm on Election Day, right? They just count the number of times your name was selected. But the other thing you can't do here in North Carolina that's interesting, Britt, is a lot of the people who want to do a protest vote have very few places to turn. 3 people will be on that ballot when you walk into the voting booth. It'll be Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Gary Johnson. And then you can write in Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. Nobody else counts. You can write in Evan McMullen, the independent. They'll count it, but they throw it in a stack called Others. It will never be attached to his name. People are beginning to learn this, and I think there are some people who are like, well, I just don't like either. I'm not going to vote for either one. And it's going to be interesting to see who benefits from them. I would say in the long run, it's going to be Donald Trump. The governor's race, very quickly, you were asking about that. That one could be even closer than the presidential race. I think Corey's made a great surge lately with his work on the flooding, as well as finally touting the economic record he's had here over the last 4 years, which has been strong. I think he may pull it out as well. And by the way, that's the one Democrats really want. If you ask them in their heart of hearts, it's not Hillary Clinton. If they really had to pick one, they want the governor's seat.
All right, Bob, thanks very much. Today, a jury convicted two former aides of New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in the George Washington Bridgegate scandal. Bridget Kelly and Bill Baroni were found guilty on all charges and could face up to 20 years in prison. Prosecutors say they were behind a scheme to cause massive traffic jams as political revenge for a Democratic mayor who refused to endorse Christie. Governor Christie claims he knew nothing about the scheme. The governor currently does not face any charges, but the Bridgegate scandal, of course, does continue to affect his reputation. And this election is unlike any we've seen before, but not just for you, the viewers at home, but also for us covering it. Chris Wallace is here on that next. Also, today's Wikileaks dump shows which Republican primary candidate had the Clinton campaign the most worried. You'll find out who that is coming up. As we head into the final weekend before Election Day, one thing is abundantly clear. There has never been an election quite like this one, nor has there been one covered in the way this one has been. To discuss that, let's bring in my old friend Chris Wallace, host of Fox News Sunday, who joins us from New York. So, Chris, as you've observed this down these long months, what has most struck you as being different, unusual, unprecedented?
I think this is the most dispiriting campaign I have ever covered, and I go back to 1980, the most negative campaign and the most issue-less campaign. If you were to listen to the basic messages that the two candidates are putting out, he's saying that she's a crook, she's saying that he's a creep, and that's the basic message that the Americans are supposed to take into the polls right now when they're voting and up to and including Tuesday.
You know, it's interesting about that, Chris, because I think both candidates, when they're on the stump and through the day of campaigning, will talk about issues and the positions they take. But it seems to be the case, and this is certainly not the first time this has happened, that what they say about each other makes more news.
Well, that's certainly true. But I have to say that I really do think, and look at the ads as well, this is usually the point in the campaign where you go positive and you want to say, here's my vision for the country, and instead he's linking her to Anthony Weiner and pervert, and she's, you know, talking about all the things he said about women and disabled people. I mean, it's just this really an almost unrelievedly negative campaign, and I think it's the
other voting so little taste for either candidate.
Well, that's part of the reason, and I think ultimately you know, look, they both went in months ago with historically high unfavorable ratings, and usually you can't turn around. I mean, if you're Hillary Clinton, you're not going to deny, obviously with Trump, you saw those high unfavorables during the primaries, and I think he's had the same strategy, make her negatives even greater than his.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case, doesn't it, Chris, that the extraordinary amount of sort of live coverage of Trump events that occurred up into the primary season and all the way through it had the effect of expanding his support in a set of the part of the Republican base, but it seems also to up his negatives with the broader population.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's just the way he conducted this campaign. He went for a niche of the Republican Party, and it was a good niche. It was 13, 14 million people. That was enough to easily win him the nomination, but it's not enough to win the presidency. He needs 60 to 65 million voters, and his big try job to 60 or 65 million people, enough to win the presidency.
You know, I was doing this program the other night, Chris, and I had an exchange with Jennifer Griffin, who's on the Clinton campaign, of course, and she was in the press bus was moving, and she's doing a live shot onto this broadcast, and I thought to myself, how varied that is.
I mean, we had to wait till we got to a stop so we could get to a landline, or God forbid, even get to a payphone and start putting the change in to make the phone call. And you know, you working at ABC, me working at NBC, we had to worry about one show a day. I had to worry about the 6:30 evening nightly news, and that was my only report. So there was a lot of time, and I think it was an advantage to us because we had a lot of time to report, a lot of time to think, and these poor young people today, I mean, I don't want to sound too much like an old fogey, but, you know, they got to report every 10 minutes. I mean, our news cycle was 24 hours. Theirs is about a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's very different. Chris, you don't have to worry about seeming like an old fogey when you're on with me, because I got that role wrapped up.
No, I think I give you a good run for your money.
All right, thanks, Chris. All the best. Thanks for doing this. And folks, don't miss this week's Fox News Sunday on the Fox Broadcast Network and later in the day on the Fox News Channel as well. Republican vice presidential candidate Governor Mike Pence will join Chris. Check your local listings for the time in your area. And we should note, earlier today, Bret Baier corrected part of what he reported on the show on Wednesday night. Bret reported that an FBI source believes Secretary Clinton's email servers were hacked by 5 foreign intelligence agencies. Earlier today, Bret set the record straight on that, and this is what we know currently. There are no digital fingerprints or hard evidence of a breach. Many at the FBI are working under the assumption that there have been breaches or a breach, but the evidence still does not point to that. We also wanted to clarify this. At this point, there is no certainty in the FBI on whether Secretary Clinton will be indicted in connection with the pay-to-play allegations related to the Clinton Foundation. What we do know is that the FBI continues to investigate the foundation in addition to her email server and her emails themselves. We regret the need to make a correction. And the Hillary Clinton campaign fretted when issues of gender pay gap arose about the campaign. Ed Henry takes us inside today's WikiLeaks email release next. A fresh batch of Clinton campaign emails released by WikiLeaks provides glimpses into the way campaign workers privately discuss things, including sometimes things they wish they didn't have to discuss. Fox News Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry joins us.
As Donald Trump makes his final push before Election Day, one theme he's not letting up on is the charge Hillary Clinton does not have the stamina to be president.
Did you see her at the end of the debates? Folks, she was exhausted. You know what she did? She immediately went home and went to sleep.
While Trump's negative ratings are nothing to write home about, Republicans have long been suggesting Clinton stays off the campaign trail to draw attention away from her own unfavorables. But when one Republican strategist tweeted about Clinton getting rave reviews from the press despite a light schedule in the summer of 2015, some of her closest aides embraced it. Success! We are driving the Republicans crazy, wrote Clinton spokeswoman Christina Shockey, boasting about hiding the candidate. Another new email released today shows that much like the media, Clinton herself hardly expected Trump's candidacy to take off. Instead, Clinton seemed flat out obsessed with Jeb Bush, even getting into the weeds by personally directing her staff to launch specific kinds of opposition research against her potential Republican rival. She was asking about what we found on whether Jeb actually reimbursed his super PAC for anything, wrote Clinton Communications Director Jen Palmieri. I told her we were still going through it. Staffers also had a near meltdown when Republican primary candidate Carly Fiorina publicly suggested the Clinton camp had a gender pay gap, even though Clinton claims pay equity would be one of her top priorities as president.
If fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
Her advisors openly admitted they didn't even know if they were paying their own women fairly. Quote, "We are going to keep getting hit on this one unless we can more strongly rebut it," wrote advisor Ann O'Leary. "Can we have an independent analysis showing that we have pay equity between men and women on the campaign? Do we have a pay equity problem?" And today we also got a glimpse at a December 2012 memo that shows how much one-on-one meetings with former President Bill Clinton cost in the form of a donation to the Family Foundation. One healthcare executive paid $140,000 for a little FaceTime. Britt?
Wow, Ed, thank you. Some Democrats in Ohio are crying foul. They claim some votes are being disqualified because of what they consider minor ballot errors. Fox News correspondent Peter Ducey is in Cleveland.
And Britt, officials here in Ohio are getting ready. They are preparing to set thousands of ballots aside for minor mistakes. What qualifies as a minor mistake? We're told something like having the signature on your ballot not match the signature that officials have on file for you. So what officials say that they do is they try to track the voter down who made the mistake, but if they never hear back, that ballot isn't going to count.
If we get absentee ballots or provisional ballots that don't have the proper information, that we at the time could not accept those, we send them a letter and they have 10 days to get us the information. For instance, if they didn't provide a social security number, the last 4 digits of their social security number, or a driver's license.
There are Democratic groups, though, who think these rules are only followed strictly in heavily Democratic areas, like counties in Ohio with big cities. One lawyer who represented the Ohio Democratic Party in a recent lawsuit about all this tells Reuters that, quote, "It's a clever scheme to shave off Democratic votes." Republicans contest that charge, though, and the Republican Secretary of State told us today that Democrats are actually the ones who have been trying to unfairly gain an advantage by complaining every time the state purges voters who have been inactive for more than half a decade.
If you don't vote for 6 years, we send you a card, and then you don't vote for 6 years, you get removed from the rolls. And a Democratic organization challenged the Ohio law in that respect. They wanted everybody who'd been removed from the voter rolls, including deceased voters and people who've moved out of state, they wanted them reinstated.
Obviously, if this election does turn out to be really close in Ohio, there will be a lot of scrutiny on why some ballots were discarded and others were not. Britt?
Peter, thank you. At one U.S. public university, handing out copies of our U.S. Constitution landed some students in trouble with the police. Campus craziness is next. Now it's time to take a look at some of the craziness at campuses across America. Students at the University of Redlands in California were blocked from holding a, quote, funeral for Halloween because college administrators thought such an event would cause emotional and psychological harm for students. In an email obtained by the college Fix, A university employee also said flyers for the event couldn't be distributed because they were not labeled satire. Students did publish an obituary for the holiday, which says, quote, Halloween is survived by other holidays, including Groundhog Day, Valentine's Day, and the 4th of July. Unfortunately, however, the same cannot be said for Thanksgiving, Columbus Day, and Christmas, all of which the flyers said are rapidly falling victim to political correctness, ruthless reign of terror. As has been documented in previous editions of Campus Craziness, Halloween is a regular target at American universities. Just this year, dozens of schools instituted guidelines that discourage students from wearing costumes deemed offensive. Some schools even have 24/7 hotlines for offended students. And students at Grand Valley State University in Michigan were threatened with arrest for handing out costumes to the institution. University police officers approached the students and told them they were in violation of the school's solicitation policy. The website Campus Reform, which covers college news, published video of the incident online. Watch.
In order to do that, then you got to be approved with Office of Student Life. There's a state law that indicates for trespass, willfully remaining on property. If you continue to stay here, then we'll need to arrest you.
The students complied with the officer's request and did not continue to hand out the Constitution. Grand Valley State University told Fox News that the students are welcome to hand out the Constitution, but must get approval from the school and do it in a pre-approved room on campus. Students at Harvard University, meanwhile, want to shut down an on-campus showing of the comic operetta The Mikado. Critics say the 19th century show perpetuates negative Japanese types. In an attempt to those concerns, the Harvard production is based on a reworked script and is set in a hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, a fictional town in Japan. The Harvard reports that the group even rewrote entire songs, replacing numbers such as Gentlemen of Japan with Gentlemen of the Strip. Those efforts did not satisfy critics, who say the reworked show fails to critically deal with race. If you have a Campus Craziness story, let us know. Email us and tell us all about it at campuscraziness@foxnews.com. We would appreciate hearing from you. One college is something of a safe space from these examples of campus craziness. This is Hillsdale College, Michigan, for Hill fame that it has for decades. It remains the only United States, for example, that requires its students to take a course on the Constitution. To discuss the campus culture that our segment's on crazy, the President Washington Police.
Well, the bureaucratic age is rules, right? So solicitation policy, when I heard you read that, I wondered if we had one at Hillsdale College. And I don't know, but I'd be astonished if we do. Remember, the kids who do these crazy things, they're mostly doing what they're being taught in class. And what are they taught in class? They're these identity groups. The identity group they're members of, and they demand recognition for their groups. And that pits the campuses at war with each other. But gracious, I mean, if you're handing out copies of the Constitution, you wouldn't do anything about it unless it becomes a nuisance and people can't get to class, and then you just ask them to stop. Why, you know, and confined to a room? I don't know. We don't live like that here, and I'm proud to say it.
Well, do you think how much responsibility does the Department of Education exercise, or deserve, I should say, for what's going on these campuses now? I understand that because of the federal grant money, which comes in the form of scholarships and direct aid, I guess, to universities and colleges, that the department has a great deal of leverage. You, by virtue of the fact that you don't take any such money, escape that. But how much of an effect do you think that leverage is having?
Well, the rules that go along with taking the student aid, I happen to know because once a lawyer, we have a lawyer in D.C. whose job is to keep the government from giving us any money. And I asked him one time to send me Title IV of the Higher Education Act, and he replied, well, there's no use. You won't be able to read it. And I thought, you know, I'm not a dumb guy, and I almost went to law school. And I even told him my favorite joke, which is I decided to get an education instead. And he said, I can't read it. It's 400 or 500 pages long. We have experts who just read that, right? And so the controls are detailed and growing, and they carry very severe penalties for not obeying, complying with them. And of course, they increasingly have these identity groups who might get their feelings hurt that are to be protected. And the main point to make about this is relations on a college need to be civil and academic. The word college means partnership. It's something a bunch of people do together. They proceed by arguing and evidence and proof. And you've got to have scope for that, or nobody will learn and people will be at odds with each other all the time. And I think that's the heart of the matter, and I think that's what's being busted up now.
And do you see any sign that there's any kind of resistance movement building against political correctness on campuses across the country?
In some notable examples, sure. I remember reading about the president of Ohio State breaking up one of those very disruptive. And remember, a college has a job. It takes a long time to learn. You get 4 years for an undergraduate degree. You need to spend the time doing that. And if these things disrupt the work of the college, it harms everybody. And I know the president of Ohio State last year, I read a story about it. But there are other examples, too, that are very good. And you know, my job and people's job who manage colleges is to keep the college working in line with the mission of the college and according to civil and academic standards.
Thank you, Dr. Arnn. Nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right now, Republicans have control of the Senate, but Tuesday's elections could possibly swing the balance in power in the other direction. We'll take a look at some of the tight races. Let's take a closer look at some of the tight Senate races around the country. We'll start with Florida, where former presidential candidate and incumbent Republican Senator Marco Rubio, as you can see, is holding on to his lead against a Democratic challenger, Patrick Murphy, and he's a current congressman, of course. Our nightly political panel is here now. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Susan Ferricchio, chief congressional correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Well, it does appear that Rubio, whose lead has been pretty consistent, it isn't huge, but the thinking seems to be that he's okay. What do you think, Susan?
I think he's going to pull out a win. It was closer than it should have been, probably for him, but the latest Quinnipiac poll has him up by 6 points, and he's also winning.
Because the average has him a little lower, yeah.
That's right, but the more recent polling has him up, and he's also doing well with by 16 percentage points over Murphy with independents. And as they say, people leading by that much with independents rarely lose.
Yeah, Molly, let's turn to another state. Roy Blunt, incumbent Republican senator in Missouri, a state where Donald Trump is well ahead and where the Democrats haven't put any money in the presidential race at all that I can see, is just hanging on. What's the deal there?
It's a shockingly close race for an establishment incumbent Republican. He should really be doing much better than he has been doing, but he's running against a very strong opponent who has taken the race very seriously, and I don't think Roy Blunt has taken it as seriously as he probably should have. But this is also an outsider year, and he is very much established.
Yeah, he's been here a while, hasn't he? That's right.
But he'll hang on, probably.
You think he'll win?
Mm-hmm. That's pretty close.
You agree with that? You think he'll win?
Yeah, it's a 1 point race. It's a 1 point race. He knows.
So you
the
believe
state
it's
well.
a 1 point race?
Blunt, that's his state. He's been entrenched there for years. He knows how to win it. But you know, it's being led by Trump in the polls too, and that may help Blunt pull out a win.
Yeah, you'd
if
think
Trump
so. Let's look at Wisconsin. Russ Feingold, the former senator, is challenging the incumbent Ron Johnson, the man who beat him. Feingold looks like he's doing pretty well. The average suggests that. What do you think, Molly?
This one's fascinating because people thought this was over weeks ago. The NRSC pulled out 3 weeks ago, and now everybody's back.
The National Republican Senatorial. So they've given up on it.
They've given up on it. Everybody thought it was done. Feingold is a very popular figure. Hillary Clinton is ahead. All of a sudden, people are all back in fighting this one out because everything's moving in Johnson's direction. I do think Feingold will still pull it out, but he has the momentum with him, and he has some advantages just in terms of the state keeping it close. Agree. He just, latest polls have them in a statistical tie. So it's possible that Johnson can pull out a win on this. But
tough state.
It is a tough state.
And of course, Trump has gotten closer there, and I guess it's gone in there.
Yep.
Which suggests that...
closer. It's closer for Trump, but he's still not necessarily going to win there.
Okay, let's look at Indiana. Indiana is an interesting place. Evan Bayh, the former senator, went back out to run. There's a question about whether he lives there. And in the Real Clear Politics average there, as you can see, Todd Young, the Republican challenger, is up. What about that?
Actually, internals may suggest that Bayh is leading by several more points than what we're seeing here in that average. It looks like Young is leading. Young is leading. Bayh's 7-point lead basically collapsed over the past 2 months just by not running a good enough campaign and being portrayed as an entrenched Washington insider who then cashed in by becoming a lobbyist and helping his staffers get all lobbying jobs. It's really hurt him. It's a
red state too, right, Molly?
Yeah, it's going to go for Trump. Everyone assumed Bayh would do well. He's also someone who's considered moderate, deeply popular. He did not take this race seriously, and Young took it very seriously, and that work is paying off. He should win. That's right.
Okay, Susan, Molly, thank you. Very succinct, very good. Coming up, some people on Twitter cannot seem to wait just a few more days for me to be gone, and believe me, neither can I. I'll read some of their mean tweets next. What you have to say. Viewer feedback continues to pour in on Twitter about Tucker Carlson taking over this desk. Lee McCarty tweeted, "Really like Tucker, but from one old goat to another, we'll miss you." Jeff Mack said, "Brett, where are you going? Your arse is old, but have a great show. I will miss the mean tweets." Alas, such sentiments were not unanimous. Bowen Spence tweeted, "Brett can't wait for Tucker because you're horrible. Retire now." And someone going by the name of Abe Froman says, "Just make sure he doesn't use your wardrobe, people. Brett, Salvation Army chic doesn't cut it." And Robert Siebold tweeted, "Maybe it's the way you sit so straight in the chair because I get the feeling you're lactose intolerant." Am I correct, sir? What? And Bird's Quest said, "Now that Tucker Carlson is taking over, who will I be able to insult on TV, Brit Hume? I was just barely getting started on your many faults." And finally, Deplorable FL tweeted, "Brit Hume is a comfortable sight. on the TV like an old chair that doesn't quite fit the room but is still comfortable. Well, thanks for that, sir. Please keep the feedback coming. We really do enjoy hearing from you. Tweet me using @BritHume or email on the record at foxnews.com. And that's about it for us tonight, but stay tuned for the O'Reilly Factor. In Bill's Talking Points, he discusses why Tuesday can't come soon enough and why so many people are so disgusted with this campaign. In the meantime, we leave you, as always, with our political quote of the day, which comes from the journalist and humorist P.J. O'Rourke, who said back in 1991, quote, "In our brief national history, we have shot 4 of our presidents, worried 5 of them to death, impeached 1, and hounded another out of office. And when all else fails, we hold an election and assassinate their character." Election Day, folks, is just 4 days away. We have a full day of coverage planned, as you might imagine, right here on the Fox News Channel. Join us throughout the day and the night on this historic Election Day. And we'll have a special edition of On the Record right here at 7 Eastern on Sunday. Don't miss that. And don't forget The Factor. It's up next. Good night.